Well, good morning and welcome to Christ's Table. We're so glad you're here with us this morning. Clearly, things are a little different and you are not getting Kevin today or even me at my best, but we still wanted to bring you a little devotional thought. So bear with me. I hope you enjoy just a little bit of what I have to say. So today's reading, we're looking at Philippians chapter 4, verses 12 and 13. Let's read them real fast together. It says, "I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, or with plenty or a little. For I can do everything through Christ, who gives me strength." So some of us realize we've heard part of these verses before, but I think it's time to hit pause a minute and think about a time when you look back on your life and you're like, at this point in life, I had almost nothing. Like, I remember the moment where I had nothing. So kind of get that moment in your head. And then there may be a moment where you feel like you have everything, or you have close to everything. And take that moment for a minute and think, I have everything. You know, when I was reading through this, I spent some time studying because, I'm one of those fact checker people, and I want to make sure that somebody who's writing these statements actually have the knowledge to write these statements. A lot of times people who have a lot will say, oh, just trust God, he always provides. Or some people who struggle and don't have a lot say the same words, and which one has more value, right? That's what we wrestle with. But the cool thing is about Paul, as I look back through his life and I look back through his journeys, he can write this stuff having lived both ends of the spectrum. He understands what it's like to have a lot and have everything, and to have people coming and giving you and everything you need and everything you want, and living at the best end of things. But he also understands prison and being starving and being beaten. So he understands both ends of the spectrum. And what I love about it is he doesn't say in here, you should all attain to be at the everything status. You should all be in a state of trying to hit that's where God's reward is. No. He basically tells us we should be content in whichever situation we're in. So I was thinking about times when I felt like we have nothing, or times when I felt like we have everything. And I had this weird realization. So when Kevin and I bought our first house, we were about to be married. I think we closed on our house 2 or 3 weeks before we actually got married, and he was going to move into the house and live in it until we got married. And I'll never forget the moment we were sitting at the closing table, and they handed us the sheet that shows you exactly what your house payment's going to be. And for some reason, we hadn't seen that before this moment. And Kevin and I were two young single people working in ministry, and money was always going to be a tight situation in our life. It wasn't something that we were ever going to feel like we had everything. And so as we looked at that balance sheet, we saw that the money didn't match what we thought it was, and that the house payment was a lot higher than what we really had planned on, or what we really had budgeted for. And so in the moment, I remember looking at Kevin and saying, what do we do? Like, we can't walk away at this point. What do we do? And he looked at me with the most calm and serious face, and he said, God's going to take care of it. So I look at him and I'm like, yeah, great words of advice, but let me show you on a piece of paper exactly where every penny that comes in from our two salaries is going to go. And we're $25 short if everything plays out perfectly, which we all know it doesn't, right? And he looks at me again and he said, that's okay. God's got it. And so in the moment where I felt like I had everything, because I had this dream guy that I was getting married to in a few weeks, we had our first home where we were going to start our life together, I also felt the pressure of having nothing. And isn't it such an interesting juxtaposition when you can be in a place where you feel like you have everything, but maybe you really have nothing? But then on the flip side of that, sometimes you can have nothing and feel like you have everything. So I think Paul is teaching us is how to be content in every situation, how to use the words of God is going to handle this. He is going to get us through this current situation. He is going to help us if we have plenty and if we have little. He is going to help us if we have full stomachs or if we're starving. He is going to help us. But the key to it that you learn here is Paul talks about that he's found the secret for living in every situation. The secret for living in every situation is accessing God's power. Because you see, when we were sitting at that closing table, I could have panicked in ultimate fear. I could have said, no, we're not going to take this house. We can't do this. No, there's no way. It doesn't make sense. I can't do it. But instead, thankfully, I chose a little road of trust. And you know what? We always made our house payment. We always had money in the bank, and we always had food on the table. Did we get to do everything we wanted to do, or buy everything we wanted to buy, or live in excess in the ways we would have loved to in those early years or even today? No. But you know what? I was content. And you know what? Because you choose to trust God, that's when you choose to live in abundance, no matter if you have a lot or a little. I think that's what Paul's saying. You know, Philippians 4:13 is what ends this, and we've heard this verse over and over again. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do everything through Christ who strengthens me. And as I dug into this verse, because sometimes this verse drives me a little crazy, because you use it in situations where maybe God didn't do the thing that he said he was going to do, or you said he was going to do, or maybe he didn't show up in the way you thought he was going to show up. But what this verse is saying is, as you kind of dig into it and read into it, I encourage you to do some word search of what the word everything means, or what the word all means, or what the commentaries really say about how that is worded in the Greek. Because the reality is, what that verse is saying is, Paul is directly talking about the 2 or 3 verses prior. He's saying, for all these things where he talked about being content, all these things about having plenty or having little, or the situations that he found himself in, he's kind of reflecting on his ministry or his life journey. And he's thinking about all the different roads and paths and situations and scenarios that he's been through. And he's saying, you know what? I can do all of these things that have been put in my path. I can do, but I can only do them with Christ's power inside of me. I can only do them with Christ's perspective in front of me. I can only do them with Christ. So no matter what's on your plate, no matter what's in front of you, what's going on in your life around you, be it something wonderful and amazing and huge, be it something awful and tragic, we know that the God of the universe will be with us in those moments. We know that the God of the universe won't leave us. He won't forget us. He won't abandon us. But he'll give us what we need to get through the situation. Just like he did with us so many years ago. You know, even this year, as we've kind of walked this faith journey with Christ's table and tried to figure out where God is leading and what he's doing, there's been so many moments where I've had that same conversation, just like at the closing table, where I'm like, Kevin, what are we doing? And he looks at me with that same grin 16 years later and says, God's got us. But you know, the cool thing is, at this point, we're able to look back and go, oh, God really does have us. Because let's remember when we were sitting at the closing table for our first house and it didn't make sense. Or let's remember the time that we sold a house and bought a house in a certain amount of time, and the timing was only by God's hand perfect. Because you realize when we trust God and we walk with him, he will give us everything we need. Think of it from the perspective of being a parent. You know, we've had a pretty interesting night around here. One of mine got hurt just a little while ago, and I remember standing there looking at her as tears rolling down her face, and her looking at me basically like, Mom, can't you take this pain away? And I literally had to breathe a moment and go, God, I need you in this moment. Because you know what? I can't be everything she needs. I can't be everything my kids need. I can't give them everything they need. But you know what? In the moment, I can try to give her the things she needs. In the moment, if I have God living through me and I access his powers, he can help me have wisdom beyond my years, or have an ability to speak in a situation I didn't understand. And he can also allow me to sit in the moment of, I know you're really hurting. I know this is a time of little, or this is a time of needing. And I can't promise you everything's going to be better, but I can promise you that God's going to be with you in it all. So I don't know today what's going on in your world. I know what's going on in our world. And my heart breaks for what's going on in Ukraine. My journal's filled with prayers and discussions about begging God for his divine enrollment, his divine plan for peace to prevail. And I hope we're all doing that. But today I hope that no matter where you're sitting, you hear a little encouragement in Paul. That he's not saying that you could, go skydiving for the first time, or if you pray the prayer right, the bank account's going to look the way you want it to look because God says I can do everything. No, what he's saying is whatever is on your plate, whatever you are walking through and stepping through, whatever you're worried about, whatever you're fearful of, no matter what it is, all of the things on your plate, that God is going to be with you and he's going to get you through it. Maybe not how we describe it, maybe not how we want it, but like Paul encourages us over and over again, that he says in verse 11, that was up earlier, it says, not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. Man, that is a hard word for me. Content and whatever I have. Because you know what, to have true contentment, you've got to have faith. Because nothing's secure. Nothing's certain. Our world changes, our situations changes, our bank accounts change, our jobs change, life changes. So to be content, I have to trust. I have to trust that God is going to be faithful in all things. I have to trust that I can do all of the things he's put in front of me with him, leading, guiding, and empowering me. So my encouragement to you is to look around and see what areas do you need to focus on or work through some contentment. I don't think it's easy work to get to a place of contentment. At least it's not for me. It's not a place that I just live, but I want to get there. And I think I get there by practicing the beautiful art of allowing God to indwell my brain and my heart and help me handle the things that are on my plate. And use that verse. I can do everything that's right here in front of me with Christ. You know, the reality is I can't do it without him. And so many days I try. So many days I try, and I try to only use that verse in a way that is big and huge, and I can change the world because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But what about the little things? What about the things that are on our plate or our mind or what we worry with every day? Am I able to say, God, I can do all of this. I can walk these roads. I can walk through all of this. I can do it all with you. But I need you to be with me. So today I challenge you, figure out what contentment looks like. Research what the word everything in that Philippians 4:13 really means. Look at times in your life when you've had almost nothing or you've had everything. Both scenarios of having almost nothing to having everything have their challenges. And realize it's not that the goal is to have everything. The goal is to have God be a part of everything. That's the secret to living in every situation.